Okay, today what we're going to do is change the door latch on a Range Rover Evoque. It's a very common fault, and this is the rear door of a Range Rover 2012 model, and I'm just going to show you and walk you through how to do it. So the problem is that this catch here doesn't actually open and close with the central locking. And that's because the door actuator inside the back of the door is actually broken, and what we'll see is we're going to have to change that and take that out and replace it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take off the door skin, and there's a couple of screws here. The first one is behind this, and then there's a couple underneath the door, which is just here, so we're going to just open that up and take that out, which comes out, which is easy, and that's a torque screw there, a T30, and then on the other side of the door handle, same again. If you can just get your screwdriver in there and pull it out. It's quite tricky while I'm trying to film this with one hand as well, but there's a little segment there and out it comes. So again, what we've got is just this, and actually it's got a little slot there for you to put your screwdriver in and pull out. Okay, so we're going to just try and get this out, and there it comes. Quite easy. Make sure you keep that little circular disc. I'm sure if it's scratched or marked you can buy another one. So there it is. Very easy, just use a much finer screwdriver to take that out. I actually used something like this. Okay, so let's just take all those screws out. First, this one, which is just a simple posi, very straightforward. I don't really need to film this, so we're going to take that out. Okay, now let's just take out the torque. I've got my little cordless screwdriver with the torque piece inside. Take that out. So that's come out nicely and easily. And then if we just do exactly the same on the other side. And again, that's come out quite nicely. Now the screws are out, let's just recap. One in there, one on this side torque, one on this side. The door now is ready just to ease out, so I think the easiest way of doing this, just start from the bottom and just pull it out and pull from the other side. Just give it a tug, or just put hand underneath where there's a gap and just pull the bottom out. So that's quite easy. And then on the Range Rover Evoque, what you've got to do is pull the top out, but pull it out straight. We're not trying to lift it, we're just going to pull it out straight out. And again, start from one of the edges here. There you go. And then the other side. And just ease that out. So that's the door. Now, what we've got to do is just take the bits off the back so that we can separate that door nice and easily. So the first thing I'm going to do, take this wire off, which just nice and easily clips off, and then there's two wiring looms, one on this side and then one just below. So again here, let's just show you. So this one clip here has gone simply into this one here, and then there's a blue clip there that we took out from just underneath here. So very simple. And then of course we have the cable that just goes in to this slot here and it pulls out. So that's the door skin removed. Let's put that to one side. So all that's been very simple so far, and here's the inside of the door. So you've got the speaker there, you've got the handle to the wire here, so the internal handle when you pull it, and what we've got here is the rest of the panel. So what we've got to do now is take all these screws out. Again, it's torque. I'm not going to film that, but you know, there's a number of those here. There's one hidden just in here at the back, and then there's one that's a socket. You'll need a socket to take that one out. So I'm going to do all of that and then we'll come back. Okay, so I'm just going to take one or two out, and then I'll leave the rest in terms of filming. So there's one that's come out quite easily. Just move that. Let's take the next one out. And so on. So I'll see you in a second. Okay, so that's all of the bolts taken out, the screws. It is a different torque size from the T30 that we used before. It's slightly smaller. Take them all out. So now what we're going to do is just take this plastic panel off. It should come out. There is a bit of tension because this cable will need to be taken out from the door. So if we just push over the cable, that's come out. Move the cable out of the way, and then the panel itself will just come out. Now I'm going to turn it over and just leave it hanging from the main wiring loom, but you need to be very careful not to damage the speaker here. But if I just turn that over, that should be okay. Okay, now what you heard there were two sort of nuts that fell on the floor. These two, that's not a problem. All that is the nuts that go behind the torque on the door handles. So when we put it all back together, I'll show you how those slot back in. So now we've got everything out of the way, and we're going to be looking inside the door to try and get out the door actuator, which you can just see here, this plastic thing. Now we did undo the big bolt that we needed a socket for, which was this one. Okay, and that's really to move one of the holding supports here at the back. So what we've got is we've got the window rubber there, and the first thing I think we should do is just take this electric fitting out, and then it's all about giving room to get right into the door itself, and this is where it's very tricky. So all I would say is you've got to take your time. If you rush it, there's obviously a chance you're going to damage something, even worse, break one of these cables that will be a bit of a nightmare to replace. So we're just going to go really slowly as we do this. Just pushing underneath the clip. It's a bit tricky. If you can't push it, just get a screwdriver, push that clip at the bottom up, and then pull that out. So put that to one side. One thing I didn't tell you properly was the socket screw that I said held on a piece at the back. Actually, it's another one of these torque wrenches, and we're going to take this out here. Take that out. And this actually holds in place a bracket that surrounds the fitting that we're going to have to replace. So take that one out as well. It's done, and it's allowed this to move away. So what I'm going to do is move that away and then just push it and turn it. So you're giving yourself a bit of room and just pull that. So actually this fitting that we're trying to replace can go to the side of it and start to move around. So what we're going to now do is let's take the 3 Torx off here, and then we can start to move the thing out. So let's take these three bolts out. There's the first one. Second one. Third one. Okay, so now it's worked loose, so we've got a bit more movement. We're going to have to take this wire off now properly, which is basically the next step. And here it is, it's a clip, and what we've got to do is with that clip just ease out the clip there by putting a small screwdriver in that top bit, and then the bottom bit, and then just prising that out. So a bit of a fiddly job, but not too bad. So let's take that off. I'm just going to put the camera down and move those clips out using my little screwdriver. In there, in there, and then that clip will come out, and then we can take the wire out. Operation, you've literally got to pull these out behind the 2, and then the clip will come out, which you can see there. And then the wire, be very careful here, up and then across. It should then just come out, hopefully. Again, trying to film this one-handed is not the easiest. Must get a tripod next time. So I'm just going to put my phone down a second, and then I'll show you once it's out how it clips out. It's a special type of clip. So here's the clip and the wire out, but as you can see, this clip, it's got a little V there. You've got to be very careful with this because it's a delicate, I think it's made out of aluminium, so if you try and pull this off and use force, you could snap this bit off. So just be really careful. But I'll just show you how it goes in into the new unit. This is the clip. It's going to go into this circular bit, but what you're doing is you're putting it in at an angle and then swinging it round. Okay, so when we took it out, we had to swing it up and then just use the tiniest bit of force to take it out, and that's it. So don't try and yank it or pull it. Let's just put it back in, and putting it in, turning it at an angle, and then just prising it out. Okay, so now one of the wires is out. We then need to look at another wire, and this is probably the most tricky out of everything we're going to do, and this requires a lot of patience. Okay, so what I've been basically doing is just turning and twisting the accentuator inside the car. So here's the end. I've got it behind this window bar, and I've just sort of twisted it around now, so the lock is now in that position rather than where it was before, twisting back round its closed position. And the reason I've had to do that is because there's another wire that needs to come out, and the only way I think you can get it out is by twisting this accentuator and then coming back through the main hole. I don't know if you can see this, but this is probably the most tricky bit. So that green fitting there has got 4 little rectangular boxes, and each one of those with a little screwdriver we've got to pull away from the fitting, and then that cable we can then pull out, and then the whole unit should come out. So this is where you just got to be patient, and again I'm gonna have to put the phone down in a second because it's very fiddly, but if you can just use another very small screwdriver here and just start to prise those little green things away, top and bottom, and then that cable, the green fitting, will at least come out, and then you've got a chance. So let me just point out the fittings a second. So what I'm talking about is here, these bits here. It's quite hard to film actually because of the sun, but you can see here you've got to take that top one and push it out, you've got to take that bottom one and push it down, same on that top one, push it up, same with that one, push it down. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'll show you how to take the end of the cable off. Okay, so finally, with a lot of patience, I've just taken my time, forced nothing, finally got that clip off, and then there's a end of the cable which actually I took off a bit earlier, and I'll show you that when I take the unit out, but again it's got to be very carefully done. So now the accentuator has dropped, I should be able to just nice and easily get that out now, and out it comes, and that's the baby that we've been trying to get out. And as you can see, this is cracked, the plastic bit there, and therefore when it closes it can't then reopen because it doesn't have the power to do that under its normal disguise, or more often I think this is just pushing that in too far, and therefore you can't, the motor and the spring doesn't have enough power to unlatch it again. So pretty poor design, and probably the wrong material to be making that fitting out of, but look, the main thing is we've now got this component out and we can start thinking about putting the other one in. Coming back to the cable, so what you've got to do here is just make sure that this hexagon part goes in to the fitting and then it turns and it locks. So originally I took that out earlier on, but same thing, when you're taking it out, twist it 90 degrees and it should then just ease out. So that's the cable. Now we can start putting it all back together. This is the fiddly green bit, so we've got to now put this back in, which is not the simplest of things, but I'm just using a plier here to help me. Push that back in. Stop. You didn't. Okay, so with a lot of jiggery pokery, finally got that clip back in. I used long nose pliers just to help me, and then it's clipped back in. So now we can move the accentuator back round, position it closer to the door and the lock, and then we've got to put the cable in at the bottom. So here's the wire that we talked about before. You can see in there that we've got to put this in 90 degrees and then turn it. So I'll put that in and then I'll come back once it's put in. So quite fiddly again, but just take your time, make sure you don't damage anything. Okay, so you can see the wire's gone in and the hexagonal end of the wire now is across the opening, so that can't come out. So one thing we've got to now do is put the cable back in. So if you remember, in at an angle and then pull down. So let's just get that in. So it's got to go into that circle there. So we're going to put it up at an angle. It's another fiddly job. Proving slightly more trickier than I thought. But again, just got to take your time on these because so look at the angle that we've had to put that in at, then we're bringing it back down. So that's now in place. We can now clip the white bits back into position. So if you remember, we took those two out previously, just push those back in. Right, so that's the wire back in now. Now we can move on with the first screw, and then we're going to put the other two back in. I'm not going to film that. Okay, so once the wiring has gone back in, we've got to make sure that we then put this socket screw back. So position that and then line it up and just push it in and tighten it. So this is where we've had this piece that we were pulling out of the way. It's a plastic part, so just move that around. Behind it's a bit of plastic, and you can see I'm just going to line it up and then screw that in. Lined up. Now let's just screw that in. Okay, so now let's flip the door back. Be careful of the speaker, and remember this cable now needs to go through that hole. So just push that back. In it goes. Come out that side. Then we might just need to pull that cable through a bit. There's a rubber behind it, and then screw all of those screws back in. So let's position it, and then I'll show you what it's like once it's positioned. Okay, so I've really pulled that rubber through, lined up all the holes, and really now just screw them all back in. So let me do that. All of the screws now we've put back in, including the one here and underneath. So one of the things we shouldn't forget is we had these two clips earlier that fell on the floor. When we dangle the door upside down, they just go straight in here, the door handles, and now we can put the door back on. Now let's put the cable back in. Just goes slides in like so. Remember, when you're putting the cable back in, you also need to make sure that you slot this green clip back in the wire, so the wire needs to come horizontally back against the door, otherwise the latch will be very, very tight to open. You need to just push back into its port, which was here. So let's just put that back in there. And we've got the blue one, which goes down here. Okay, this cap. So let's put the top in first. Remember, just push it straight in. Should go straight in. Go. And then we're going to push the rest of the door back in, and that's the job completed. And then just put the torque screws back in, and then we've got to put the posi drive back in. So let's just put this one in. Same on the other side, which you can just bake out, and that's it, finished. And then we'll check whether it works or not. Okay, so finally put the clips back in. Just push those back in. So the moment of truth. So before, my door was not locking at all, and therefore it wasn't opening, all because this catch is not moving in or out. So let's try locking the door now. So central twice on this one, so main door's locked. Fantastic, it's actually worked, which is brilliant. So let's see if it unlocks. So front door's open, yep, never had a problem with that. Rear door, excellent. So all done. So the part itself was only £29, actuator. It's a little bit fiddly, but I think a garage, I was quoted 500 quid to do that job. Well worth the saving in money. Okay, hope you found that useful. Thanks very much.